Hello, my name is Adrian. I'm a professional engineer and owner of Camp Engineering. You can find more information about my company at the website campengineering.com. That is camp-engineering.com. In this video, I will address seawall failures that are familiar to coastal residents as a result of certain types of hurricanes. A hurricane can cause reverse tidal surge when seawater is blown away from the coastline. Since 2005, the central west coast of Florida had 3 such events, with hurricanes Wilma, Irma, and Ian, which caused many residential seawalls to fail. From an engineering strength and stability design perspective, the most common seawall design is a sheet pile that is assisted by tiebacks from the top of the seawall to the land side in order to prevent overturning. In some cases, where owners wanted, say, a pool close to the seawall, it became necessary to remove the tiebacks and to retrofit the seawall with buttresses on the canal side to the top of the seawall. That is a challenging retrofit that requires some displacement of the wall for load to transfer to those buttresses. With this video, I will focus on seawalls with tiebacks as shown schematically here in cross-section. Some rules of thumb to be aware of. The forces on the wall are from hydrostatic type pressure. From the higher land side, the pressure tries to push the wall towards the seaside. This is called the active pressure. From the seaside, the wall resists the active pressure with pressure called passive resistance. There is also pure hydrostatic pressure due to water on both sides of the seawall. Now, water weighs in the range of 3/4 ton per square yard, making it important for strength and stability reasons to equalize the water pressure on both sides of the wall. In order to generate passive resistance, it is also necessary for the wall to move just a little bit towards the seaside. In doing so, obviously, there is some displacement of the soil on the land side, but that's typically not a problem. The active and passive pressure relate to the strength of the soil. For some people, this relationship between active and passive pressure is counterintuitive. For example, the weaker the soil is, the higher the active pressure is, and the lower the passive resistance. The ratio of passive resistance to active pressure is typically from about 4 to 20 for weak to strong soils. In other words, passive resistance pressure is much higher than active pressure, which is fortunate because there is less soil on the canal side. Out of engineering curiosity and to help communicate seawall design aspects to homeowners who usually are not engineers, I built a scale model of a typical seawall in my neighborhood. In my case, that consists of a 7-foot tall reinforced concrete sheet piles embedded about 2 feet into the sand on the seaside and retaining 5 feet taller fill on the land side. The model has a scaled 1-foot grid marked up on it in order to track any displacements of the wall. The model wall itself is slightly smaller than the inside of the model so that the tank walls do not restrain the seawall and to mimic the very necessary leakage of water to either side of the seawall. Near the top of the wall, there are tiebacks extending to the left side of the model as viewed here. In addition, a valved drain is provided on the right side to help mimic tidal action. The water drains into a bin in which 2 small sump pumps are installed, which can pump water back into the model, for example, to simulate rainfall. The sandy soils that we have is modeled using mini ceramic balls with the same specific gravity as sand and with similar bulk shear strength properties. First, I will demonstrate tidal water levels from low to high, with and without rainfall, and at the rain intensity, which will be less than the leakage flow from either side of the seawall. After playing around with the model, this video starts out with the water level high on both sides of the seawall. When opening the drain valve, water is pumped from the bin back to the land side. This video is played back at about 8 times normal speed. I also supplemented the rainfall from a watering can in order to demonstrate what the leakage flow is and how the phreatic surface is maintained on both sides of the wall. As demonstrated, no movement of the wall is noted, and water is controlled by the valve to equate to tidal rise and fall. It is important to notice that the canal side fill in this model is at a constant horizontal level. Later, I will demonstrate a significant weakening of the seawall that happens when the canal fill is sloped too aggressively away from the wall. In order to explore what to expect when there is a reverse type hurricane surge, at the same time as torrential rain, I relocated the model in order to dispense more water into the land side without making a mess. Considering that the sea is, relatively speaking, an infinite reservoir, the water is only applied to the land side. Rainfall does not change sea level. You will notice that the drain could not keep up with keeping the canal side empty, which means that the result is conservative in that the canal side water in the model actually provided some resistance force to delay the toe failure of the seawall. For this video, I discharged water from a hose onto a filter pad in order to mitigate the water from boring down into the landside fill. As demonstrated, the seawall rotated about the tieback anchors, letting the toe slide into the canal. If you play back this video in slow motion, you will see a classical slip circle failure plane develop. You will also note that the top and bottom of the wall moved down as the toe failed, consistent with observations of several residents in our community after previous hurricanes. An interesting observation is that the post-failure wall slope was about 15 degrees off vertical, which agrees exactly with the actual failure angle I measured at the failed seawall in our community. Several other common seawall issues are also demonstrated in this and the previous video. 1. The net flow of water is from the land side to the seaside. Over decades, this is enough to wash away a significant fraction of the landside fill. This happens because of normal tides, with and without rain. Water in the canal does not have the ability to deposit that fine material back behind the seawall. As I have said many times, the main reason our canals turn brown is because the fine silt fraction of the landside fill is easily washed out and takes many days to even weeks to settle down into the canal bottom. Second, some residents have concrete slabs butting up against the seawall. Over decades, as fine material is washed into the canal, voids form on the land side, which causes the fill to settle and in turn form voids under those slabs. Often the owner is blissfully unaware of this until one day the slabs fail. There is no escaping this phenomenon without making changes to the structure and design of the seawall. For example, catching and routing rainwater to deposit directly into the canal may slow it down a little bit, but not stop this process. For tied-back walls, injecting an inert structural foam strategically on the land side, as well as along the bottom of the sheet piles, will greatly slow down and can, for all practical purposes, be designed to stop further loss of fines. You can measure the degree towards failure of your wall by measuring the angle of the wall off our vertical. The following slide and video demonstrates the same as for the horizontal canal bottom case. The exception is that here, the canal soil was excavated to represent our canals. In my canal, that slope is from approximately 2 feet deep to about 7 feet deep in the middle of the canal, which is more or less the same as a 1 in 10 slope. The model slope here is 1 in 6, which is steeper, in order to explore what may happen in the future if dredging activities go too close to the seawall or is too aggressive. Observations from this demonstration over and above the previous case may be summarized as: 1. The seawall failed much easier than before, requiring heavy but not torrential rain along with the reverse tidal surge. The failed angle was the same as before, about 15 degrees. This is related to the shear strength of the fill material. With the above demonstration, one can start thinking about and understanding the implications of various wall improvement options. My wish is that these demonstrations provide value to you and help you make informed decisions about your aging seawalls. In order of cost, there are many options to maintain, refurbish, or rebuild your seawall. Remember what I said earlier, the ratio of passive resistance to active pressure is typically from about 4 to 20 for weak to strong soils. In other words, passive resistance pressures are much higher than active pressures, which is fortunate because there is less soil on the canal side. Therefore, if you strengthen the soil on the land side, you reduce the active pressure acting on the wall, and if you do this on the canal side, you increase the resistance of the wall. Both of these two measures will, with absolute certainty, mitigate your wall from failing. As my wife and I near retirement, my preference is to do exactly what is needed, no less and no more, in order to help our seawall not fail during our lifetime. In our case, the clear best and cost-effective option for this strategy is to strengthen the soil, not by blanket geotechnical soil injection with foam, but by analysis to determine exactly how much and where to do it in order to give us a factor of safety in excess of existing code requirements. Provided your wall is still in reasonable sound condition, the cost of doing this is typically about a third of the cost of rebuilding the wall. Doing this can also target areas to fill existing cracks in order to arrest rebar corrosion. If you live within an hour or so drive from Palmetto, Florida, feel free to contact me anytime for a free, no obligation consult on your seawall. If you're further away, I'll charge you only for travel expenses. Thank you for your time and attention.